DIA Amsterdam. I'm talking to Eugene from Bayern. You gave a keynote presentation, how to innovate with a company like Bayern, which has 125,000 people and a huge amount of businesses. Well, how did that program start, and what are you doing? What did you learn?
So I actually don't like calling it a program anymore. So it started about 5 years ago. This was a gentleman called Jesus Del Val that kind of said, we got to do grants for apps when apps were sexy, right? It started with some small meetups. It started with an accelerator for the European startups. I loved what the team was doing. I actually met the team around 2013. And then I joined in 2016, so the program was evolving along that. There was a number of bottoms-up teams in the organization. We had Life Science iHub on the West Coast. I won't list them all, but we've, in the last about a year and a half or so, we merged under what's now G4A, so it's no longer about grants or apps. G4A. So we basically grow with startups, or we advance with startups. So that's our new.
So that's a new thing. But let's talk about the last 5 years. How many of those startups have you basically worked with in some kind of fashion?
Yep. So we have what we call a portfolio of 150 companies around our G4A family around the world, from Shanghai to Seoul to Istanbul, etc. 150 companies that we either have some kind of a convertible note arrangement through the accelerator model, or a letter of intent that's being negotiated, or an actual commercial contract that went through. So that's 150 companies.
What was the result?
The yield of it is about a 20% conversion to actual commercial contracts, so it's about 30 of them.
Now, so you've done that for 5 years. You now redesigned. What have you learned? Or how can you basically have a company like Bayer?
Yep.
You know, it's about digitalization, about along the existing business lines, new things. What have you learned? What works and what doesn't?
So honestly, we're still learning. It's a continuous, and we're acting almost like a startup. I joke around. We're kind of like a Series A startup within Bayer ourselves. Couple of things, and I tell this to all the startups. The one key thing, or 5 key things, is persistence.
If you want to deal with Bayer, you basically have a little bit of patience and persistence.
Yeah, I lost my hair in the last 3 years, but not really. There's a lot of passion, right? And I talked on stage about the Oreo cookie approach, in a sense that there's a lot of bottoms-up innovators, rebels with a cause, but it always needs to be top-down with a hard layer on top. And that's when kind of the mushy stuff happens. So for the last number of years, we've really been kind of creating our own mandate as a team, moving things along. So aside from pivoting within the programs, introducing different models, last year in 2018, we also launched what we call G4A Ventures, which is how do we put a team of and entrepreneurs together with a particular challenge to go, quote unquote, solve it and go forward with new revenue streams, right? I can't talk about this particular concept yet, hopefully next year this time.
We'll see the result, but then let's see what is the content of the program. I mean, you have meetups, you have investments, you have basically products you developed, and you do that all over the world in an unbelievable, very complex, workflow.
So I started my presentation, it's all about people. So the meetups, to give you an example, we have them going on under STEM for Health umbrella in 35 countries, over 40 cities. These are passionate individuals at Bayer that want to do something different, that want to get out, that want to create an ecosystem. And I joke around, it doesn't take much than 50 beers, a room and a topic to just get out. So that's kind of one.
And so how many thousands of the events have you had in those?
Probably hundreds, but we have over, I think, 14,000 members to our meetups around the world, and
how many are from Bayer and how many are from the startup?
So usually it's a core team of Bayer. So if you multiply 35 till about times 2 or 3, that's the Bayer individuals. The rest are just members of the community, right?
They basically want to share. They want to basically discuss a topic. They want to see if there's cooperation possible. Okay, and then what's the next step?
So the next step is in different countries, and again, we're not prescribing this. To give you an example, Selina Chu, who is the president of Greater China, came to us a couple of years back and said, I want to get involved with G4A. And so she opted in to do a full-blown incubator accelerator in Shanghai, right? And there was a team put together, and this is year 3. We're now moving into much more commercially focused programs in Greater China. Right around there, Hong Kong has a smaller program. Taiwan just launched it. Very much, I'll say, bottoms up, right? And so what happens is now is I'll give you one example. There was a startup that went through our Seoul Career Accelerator, then went into the Berlin program. Then now they have a contract with Charité. It's around AF detection for heart, atrial fibrillation. I'm not a doctor, even though my wife thinks.
In Bayern, you have to know these kinds of words and basically smile and have no problem with it. And I would go like, okay, yeah. So that is very interesting. Now, you as a team, you have to have social capital, you have to have support, and it starts somewhere, and then you have to have results, and that has to be a feedback loop. How did that start? Who gave support for this kind of program? How long does the support need to be if you're looking at another big company who wants to do something like that?
So it's been a long journey, right? As I mentioned, for Jesus, who started that, was I think climbing all the way up the hill as just kind of grabbing, and if you look even at the space we're in Berlin.
It was not the board of directors says we need to have this innovation process. It came slowly climbing up, showing it was useful every step of the way, and then at a certain point it was accepted by the company and basically pushed down.
Yeah, it's an evolution. So it started very much of we got to do something. Let's explore. Mindset change is key. I mean, if you think about what you mentioned, 120,000 employees, we don't want everybody innovating every single day, right? Or going crazy, right? So
Especially a German company wants to structure and organize that.
Yes, and again, back to this persistence, right? Because part of it is also challenging some of those things that's been there. Even to give you an example, setting up a convertible note structure, working with finance and legal. What does that mean? How do you protect it? Well, no, the goal is to be the most startup-friendly convertible note for that 50 to 100K that we give. It's not about that, right? It's my team's goal is to work really with the best entrepreneurs in the world, right? So to cap off your discussion it's the continuous persistence of sort of creating that mandate. We now have a new CEO in pharma, Stefan Ulrich, who is a huge supporter. So we will see when and how where the acceleration is happening. But very good discussions. We're all looking forward to it.
So you arrived at the top, and now basically you can expand to it. Now, you have 30, basically examples of things which worked out. What is the most successful cooperation?
So to this date, up until this year, we've been really focusing much more on what I would say our existing value chain. So a lot of good examples in our research and development. There's a company from Hungary, Tsabi, who I think actually is here at the event. They work in compound therapies for oncology, right? So working with our bioinformaticians to find that right mix to speed things up. So that's kind of on one side. One that, I think my team is personally very excited about is our last year's graduate that we're working through some commercial models now, is a company called Canaptic. It's an electroceutical that basically sends signals, and whether it's here or there or whatever, and stimulates nerves and muscles. So think about the possibilities there, whether it's on stroke recovery, whether it's on deep vein thrombosis, whether it's, there's so many use cases. So how do we make this work? Because electroceutical, what's that, right? From a big corporate perspective. And also, well, it's not a molecule. So how do we help the patient and the end consumer through the journey of their life?
That's basically now starting to become into commercial space. Hey, you're not a doctor, you're not medical. What's your background? Because if you have a program like that, you need different kind of people, making people inside Bayer enthusiastic and the outside world. What kind of people do you need to bridge that gap?
Wow, did you see my presentation? No. So one of the key things, it's all about people, right? So my background, I sort of grew up in tech, but realized tech is useless unless you put it into people's hands. So, for me, I'm very commercially focused, but understanding the technology. I'm not a scientist. I will never pretend to be a scientist, but about a third of my team is anchored into life sciences. About a third of my team understands and drives the technological advancements. And then the third is novel business models, right? Part of it is it's not about creative thinkers around, I know most CFOs don't want to hear is innovation accounting. But it's a little bit around how do you brainstorm if there's an asset, you know, how do you actually package this together or don't package it together? Do you integrate it horizontally, vertically, or not integrated? So how do you put those assumptions? And the beauty of it, those people work very closely together. You know, our ventures unit, for example, we got roles like a venture architect, business designer, interaction designer. You know, one of them has 20 years of film experience. How do people interact?
And sounds like a big team. How many people are there?
So the core team is 18 people, but the amazing part is that G4A family that I mentioned around the world, and also it's amazing, probably every week I get, I'd say, anywhere between 3 to 10 emails from around the world within Bayer, but also outside. Can we join the team? How?
Wonderful. Hey, you basically give the presentation on stage. What do you think of DIA?
So I'll be frank with you, I literally arrived 20 minutes before. What I'm excited about is I think part of the whole health and care ecosystem that's shifting and turning 180, 360 degrees constantly. You know, insurers today still price risk. How do we all as an ecosystem work together to price wellness and health?
That's basically what you see happening here.
I hope so. So many discussions to be had for the rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.